Well, hello, guys. I see our friends are starting to come in. Another round of the Healer's Corner with myself and Maria. And tonight we were going to talk about ancestral healing. And Maria, it was actually one of your students, maybe you want to call her student, who kind of suggested this topic. Now, when you get into or want to discuss the ancestral healing, like what does that mean to you, Maria?
For me, I bring my ancestors. I mean, my ancestors are always around me, especially when I'm doing a healing work, any kind of healing, whether it's a reading or an actual healing session. And I bring them around me. And I focus on certain ancestral members of mine, like my great grandfather, who was a medicine man. I bring him in, and he's always present. It took me a while to connect to him, though, and it was actually Zane who helped me connect to him. You know, our our shaman teacher. So I bring them in, and they help me. They're my go-to counselors, basically. Um, I always look at them. They're my first type of teachers and counselors and mentors that I bring them in. And I usually get maybe messages from them, or I get like a flash of something that I need to pay attention when I'm doing the healing. But that's how I utilize them. And, with also, I have an ancestral altar
Hmm.
and I honor them in that way. So that's what it means for me, is bringing them in when I'm doing a session, because they may be able to point something or give my attention to some when I'm with a client.
Hmm.
Also with myself, when I don't understand what's going on, if there's something going on and I need clarity from them. I know I do have guides there, spirit guides, but my ancestors are usually the first one that I go to.
Okay. Now, do you ever work with the client's ancestors? Like, do you pick up on them and do you communicate with them and do those? And if you do those ancestors ever really help you get to the root of the problem? Like, do they say, well, she's really asking about this, but here's really the bigger problem?
Yes. And I actually asked permission for my answers to bring in their ancestral guides, because we all have ancestral guides. Um, I can't just overstep, and I need permission. And that's the one thing that I've always learned in the different modalities that I have worked on or went to learn, and is always ask permission, because they're not my guides. That belongs to the client. There is a sacred relationship that they have with their clients. So I get permission, and sometimes they are forthcoming and helping. Um, and sometimes they're just around, just watching.
Yeah. I've had that too, an audience,
Yeah.
thing. And, sometimes almost feeling, that you're being graded. I find that I'm more perceptive to the client's ancestors in that moment than I am my own. And,
Mm.
and I'm sure mine are there, but and I guess maybe just where my focus is because I'm working with that client. So what information do I need to know and what's going on and what needs to happen? And so like I'm picking up on them, way more than I do, mine, which is funny when I say that out loud, really. Um,
So your ancestors are silent.
funny enough, like in readings and stuff with mediums, like it's very rare for family members and stuff to come through, honestly, on my end. And even sitting in seances, it is so rare for any of my people to come through. Um, and every now and then, like my one grandfather will show up, but he will hang around on the outside again, like watching and judging and like there's a guy standing over there and they'll describe him and I'll pull up a phone and I'm like, look like this. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's Grandpa George. But never really says anything, just kind of hangs out and observes. So But I feel like ancestors are very important in a lot of healing work, even if it's just helping you better understand what your client is
Mhm.
needing versus what they think or what they are perceiving versus like what the major underlying issue is. Because sometimes they're not even aware that it goes deeper than what they're presenting. Um, have you ever had an instance, where um, an ancestor comes through and maybe you were unsure of if they were yours or the client because of it being like a new type of ancestor coming through?
Well, usually when I feel that when I'm connected to the client's energy, the minute that they walk in with me, I'm already connected to the energy. So I can pinpoint there might be an ancestor that's coming stepping forward. I have clients that the ancestors just give out the whole entire it outs them basically. you know, um, you have a client, whether it's a reading or a healing, you know, mostly it comes up in the reading, and I'm getting, like somebody's aunt, somebody's grandmother, somebody is just tell them, well, you need to ask them about this. You need to ask them about this. And I'm going, okay. It's like I had a client, she came this is I mean, she has come to me several times, and I remember the first time I said you need to drink more water, and she said, how do you know that? I go, so your ancestors coming in to tell me you need to drink more water. And so I saw her recently, and I said, she go, I'm drinking more water. I go, that's good. Tell me about the sugar. And she said, I'm trying my best. And I said, tell me about the sugar. I go, they pretty much out, they gave you your secret out. It's not candy. And I said, yeah, but sugar is, it's pop, it's fruit juice, it's cake, it's not candy, you know. She go,
Mhm.
darn it. She go, they outs me. I go, exactly.
Gonna air your dirty little secrets.
They just bring it all out. So I love those, because you might have a client that's trying to, well, I'm drinking more water, or I'm doing this, I'm exercising. And I say, okay, that's fine, that's great. But how about this?
Mhm.
Well,
Oh, good question, Erica. She says, I'm more than half German and it's really hard for me connecting to that side for obvious reasons. What advice do you have going about vetting those kind of ancestors of ours? I know not all my German ancestry is like what I'm afraid of, but the fear is making me hesitant. And that was going to be kind of a question I was going to bring up later, but we'll just jump right into it to talk about is, really, do you have to work with and venerate every ancestor? Not really. And,
mm,
how do you vet out those that are, most beneficial?
well, I usually, what I have there, when I, like my great grandfather, that's for example, I was really curious with him because, of course, he and I did not we came into this world at a different time. So I knew about him and I was really curious about him. I had no pictures of him. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know. All I know is there was like stories, family stories. So I wanted to connect to him. I'm not connected to all of my ancestors. He was the one that it was an interest. I wanted to know exactly what he was about, what he stand for in the family line. It was nice to know that he was respected in what he did, versus I had family members that they were considered crazy. Uh, but I don't vet all of my ancestors. I know there's quite a few of them. They may not agree, even though they're in the spirit world, they may not agree of certain things that I dealt with. There's some old, like, how you have that ongoing story of
Mhm.
this and that and that and that. And sometimes, like, I don't agree with some of their, ways that they did things. So I usually don't connect to those ancestors. I know they're there. but I don't
Mhm.
connect to them.
Now, to kind of like take off on Erica's question, so let's say that an ancestor of questionable, history and actions come forward and they're like, I would like to, heal that energy, those actions that I did to step into now talking about healing the ancestor that is passed. We went over a little bit with that in like our shaman group, but I'm curious to see what um pranic healing says, on that.
As far as pranic healing is concerned, we trauma is trauma. We
Mhm.
don't care if it's something that's in the bloodline or generational. We don't care if it's something that you have created or believed into. Trauma is trauma. So we go ahead and just start clearing the energy of it. And we don't put a lot of stake in where it's coming from. We just know trauma is trauma.
Mhm.
Um, Here's an example. I did a healing on someone, and I noticed that my ancestors and my guides said stop, because I was preparing this person's energy field to start doing pranic healing. Stop, and they said go here, and I saw this. It was actually like an old wood, so I know it's old trauma.
Mm.
And so I cannot just yank that out. I have to slowly take it out. And I needed that client to help me. And I said, there is something here. It's weighing you down. Are you ready to release it? And he said, release it all. And I said, I need you to keep saying to yourself, I'm releasing it. I'm releasing it. I'm releasing it. And so therefore I started pulling it out, and it was like really old wood. It went right straight to the chest area from the front to the back. And I did it from the back. I couldn't do it from his front. I did it from the back, and I started slowly taking it out. And I just started um receiving a lot of energy, because I we were trained to receive energy from all source all around us. So I was getting really hot, and I started taking it. And once I got it out, someone else saw that there was this huge big light coming out of their chest. And this person's body, because he was sitting down, it just completely, like something like, oh my God, that feels so good. It's like a huge big load came off. And that's how I pay attention when I get those messages from my ancestors. And that same person, I saw one in the back of the neck. It was an old wooden ice pick. So I know that's old trauma. It's not just in this life, it's other lives and other generational trauma. So that I had to do the same thing again.
Mm.
Mm, and once I was done, I asked the person, have you ever had, like, I go, not heart condition, but like sometimes your chest would feel so heavy. And he go, yeah. And I said, how about your neck? Have you been having a lot of tension? I go, the shoulder blades. Have you been having a lot of, yeah. And I said, how do you feel now? He said, unusual. I don't know how else to say it, unusual. Because this is something that was just a burden. So
And
it could be a generation trauma. It could also be coming from past lives too. So in panic healing, we do not care where it's coming from. Trauma is trauma.
well, I'm sure he was so used to feeling that and carrying that, that he didn't know what that new feeling was because he hadn't felt it, or at
Hmm.
least so very long that, how do you ascribe something that's new other than in that instant? Like, I don't know yet. I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah.
Um, I know the times that I've approached past ancestors who have needed some help or guidance and maybe they haven't crossed all the way over. I use my mesa as like a big healing table. And a lot of the times, especially even if it's a live person who's not physically here, like I call their essence into that mesa, and it's almost like a little bitty person that I start working with, and working with the energies, working with them, and, doing the healing that way, bringing them into that healing space and just kind of working through whatever those issues may be, past, actions, the traumas, any sort of guilt that
Mhm.
maybe that they are lingering with, so that, they can, peacefully evolve in whatever goes on that other side, right? We have theories, but
Mhm.
we don't necessarily know until we really get there.
Well, not no, we don't remember.
Oh, true, true. Hey, Chris. Um, Erica says, "Thank you for explaining. Definitely need to come get a healing again. The previous healings I've gotten to have been so healing and very insightful." Yay.
Have have ancestors who are in the spirit world. My great grandmother. She, I guess, there's times when you are not listening to them, and I have been told about that from my ancestors.
They
But
called you out.
yeah, they called me out because I wasn't paying attention to the messages that I was getting, and another practitioner got a hold of me. Your grandmother, your great grandmother is trying to get your attention to do a healing on you. So I had to do a healing on the spirit, and no, not once, but several times. And some of them were ancestors, some of them were other spirits that's not related to me. And yes, because on the take that you were saying, they are a little bit stuck, or they're reliving an event that happened when they were in the physical, and they don't know how to get past that. So yes, I've had that also.
Now, for somebody new wanting to come in, you and I, we kind of made a list of how to get started. And, for me, it was always like I kind of start with who my favorite ancestors that have passed. And it's usually like a close grandparent, aunt, uncle, and doing things like when you set a family dinner, you leave, or you place a table setting for
Mhm,
them.
mhm,
Having their pictures around is great. Like, I think a lot of people forget that that is a way to honor them by leaving them up, and remembering that they were even real at one point. And then you can get into altars, and there's no one way to do an ancestral
mhm,
altar. But like you've mentioned, you have one.
mhm.
Do you have like a day a week that you do regular maintenance, if you will, for it?
Yeah, I usually honor them on a Sunday morning.
Mm.
I thank them for the week that they were there with me and guiding me to whatever life threw at me. So I do remember to thank them, and I do remember to honor them. Um, unfortunately, unfortunately, I have one ancestors that's constantly decided that she can come and bother me.
Wonder who that might be.
She was a pistol in life, so she's a pistol now. But it's all good. It's fine. And I don't usually, like, sometimes I stop in the morning. It doesn't matter what day of the week, and I said thank you. You know, but
Mhm.
said I need to keep my office hours with you.
Mhm.
But yeah, I do have that ancestor that just thinks that they can come in and talk to me whenever they feel like it.
Well, I mean, she did that when she was alive, so I'm not surprised. I would have been disappointed had she changed behavior. Um, like, "Oh, that's not what I thought she'd be doing." If anything, I thought she'd be more communicative because she can come and go as she wants.
But
Uh,
I usually it's Sunday. I honor all of them and I thank them. What I do is I go into meditation. I do meditation every day. Usually in the morning because it's easier for me. but on a Sunday, I call it, I go to my lab, and I start bringing them into my lab. So even the ones that I don't know what they look like,
Mhm.
um, but I know that their name, I know about their name, and then I say anyone else who is, you know, connected to my bloodline, please come in and join. And it gets, I get really hot because I know the energy stirring. I was like, okay, you guys need to back away for now because it's just getting too hot for me. I mean, in the wintertime, sometimes I have like the fans on in the morning in the
Mhm.
winter.
It's Ohio, just crack the window. You'll have all the cool that you want. Save the electric bill, Maria. Crack a window, crack a window.
But yeah, I do honor them on a Sunday. I usually put on a Sunday is when I honor them.
See, I do a lot of mine on Mondays because that's no work,
Mhm,
nothing else going on. It's easier for me to slow down and take that time. Um, and I find a lot of times while I'm driving, because again, driving can't really be doing a whole lot of else. So, it's kind of like imagining that if they were driving in the car with me, you know, and just communicating and whether or not they're really riding there, I think they are, so therefore they are. So, genealogical research helps a lot if you're wanting to know where your lineage comes from. But
mhm,
here's the other like expanded question. So, to research now in this lifetime, see where your family, your bloodlines have come from and what those people and those traditions are. But for those of us that kind of remember past lives and other instances, it's especially if that past life was in a different cultural area, walking that fine line maybe of what society would deem appropriate versus what feels right to you.
mhm.
So I think that that's kind of like more of a personal thing that you feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, yeah. It becomes, for me, your connection with your ancestors is a really sacred personal journey.
Mhm.
And you start to learn a lot about yourselves that way. You know, about the past. You know, once you learn about now, I may not agree some of the things that my ancestor believed in,
Mhm.
but it worked for them. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be my belief. It doesn't have to be part of my life. It worked for them. And also there is like different periods in life, you know, like society geared it to, you know, whatever that was going on that time, you know. And I know that some of my ancestors will be very surprised. Nowadays we can talk about spirituality. It's very open. So many of them could not do that. You know, they could not say anything. They may pick up on people. They may have the ability to be a medium. They may have the ability to be psychic. They may even have the ability to do just be natural healers, but they could not outright say that. So
Right.
a lot of them did the underground thing. A lot of them did it behind the scenes.
Mhm. T and Tarot says most of my ancestors were Christian, so I honor them on Sunday with some of their favorite music and meals. And see that's the thing of like knowing who they are and what they enjoyed and doing that for them. Um, I have a lot of coffee drinkers in my immediate, so I'm like, "Yay, me too. Here, have a cup of coffee." Um, so, very, very much European, this time around. Um, and I think I've stated before that when I had genealogy done and did some ancestry work, like I was so disappointed that there was no South American because that Paco shamanism, everything like just sings to me. It feels right. And when that did not come up, I'm like, what do you mean that there is no South American right now here? What do you mean? And, I still have living ancestors in, Czech, in Ireland, and I'm like, that's really cool. I don't feel the like, ooh, let me go learn about all of that. Ooh, let me go learn those deities and that tradition and that. I'm like, ooh, no, it's cold. no, no, I don't want to. And so, through the classes and learning, like, I made it my mission to, yes, I honor the ancestors that I know now, in this lifetime who have passed and what they but going back farther, feeling like there are so many ancestors from South America in past lifetimes and still, carrying on that tradition and doing that healing work, but doing
Mhm,
it respectfully, right? Um,
mhm.
so I think that does come down to that personal choice for somebody that, you know, if you feel a connection before and maybe a past life hypnosis would help you connect even stronger to that and understand where
Yeah.
that's coming from and why maybe you feel detached from this time around of
Mhm,
what's not connecting. But I do feel that it's okay to honor ancestors from past lifetimes that you have had and that you've worked with, because I feel like they're still going to be helping and working with you now.
mhm.
Um, so forgiveness work. Here can be a real touchy subject. And I think I kind of laugh and joke about it, but I think it's a good example. A, a lot of families have that creepy Uncle Joe who cross lines and do inappropriate things.
Mhm,
Learning to forgive that creepy Uncle Joe,
mhm.
and what they did, if nothing else to help you yourself, but that forgiveness and how do you approach and work with that?
And that's the same thing again. I will go into is like because there's it's a ju it's hard to okay. I love the death rite in shaman work. I love it. Um, if I could do it all the time to do it, that would be great. Um, it's like what I was taught is like a layer of onions. You do it for yourself first in any healing work, and then the next one is the family.
Mm,
So I use myself as a conduit to eradicate any kind of karmic debt the family had racked it up over generations.
mm,
So that is something that I would love to do, you know. So, so and then I start doing I go into pranic healing. What I do is that I go into, I call it my lab is a third eye lab. And I go into a lab. I go into a meditative. I go into a lab, and I start bringing all of the family, whatever the last name that they carry over their generation, and I start calling, the Cerna clan or the Cancer clan, or I start calling
mm.
them in because, like I said, I don't know all their names. I don't have all the pictures of all of them, so I do have the family name, the last name. So I bring them all in the lab, and then we just I start doing them. I put them in a soft wall, and I start doing the healing on that. I start giving the healing on that. So that's one way that I do it besides the shaman do, right?
Yeah, I think if you have a client who is troubled by and wanting to heal some sort of traumatic event, from a past person in their family, helping them let go of the guilt, the shame,
Hmm.
any other type of feeling that is not serving them, is the great starting point,
Hmm.
because they're the first ones to bring this issue to light.
Hmm.
So starting there is fantastic, and then moving into that ancestor. And we all will say, at least, in the store, that, mediumship and working with those that have passed is not necessarily the easy game of telephone, because you can try to connect with them, and if they don't want to, they're not going to.
Exactly.
So you have to, hope that that ancestor is willing to acknowledge what happened and be willing to start that process of healing, not only for your live client, but
Hmm.
for that traumatic energy that happened then. So, you know, And that's where the steps going forward kinda determine or are determined by whether or not that ancestor is willing to be like, "Yeah, that was me, I did it."
Mhm.
I'm genuinely sorry, or, did they just kinda, like, slowly back out of the room and be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Um, so if you have a client, Maria, and that ancestor's like, "Nope, I'm not addressing it. I'm not gonna go there." How do you help the client then finish their healing process if that ancestor is acting like it never happened?
Then what I would do, I will focus on the client. If that spirit does not wanna acknowledge it, I will have that client disconnect, and that's where we go into the cords. I
Mhm,
will have that client and I will actually pull the cords out, so they can disconnect.
mhm,
um, that does not mean that, they're no longer part of that client's lineage. They're still a part, but I'm disconnecting the guilt. I'm disconnecting the feeling of I can't go on because Uncle Joe was so creepy and he did a lot of things to awful people. That is Uncle Joe's karma. So I'm disconnecting that cord
mhm,
to help that person, because why should you carry a burden what Uncle Joe did?
mhm.
It's not your burden to bear.
Right.
So having that, getting that cord disconnected, and then having that person, whether Uncle Joe wants to acknowledge it or not, just forgive them. Forgive them. And the one thing that I do sometimes ask my client is write a letter, address it to that person, put all your feelings down in that letter. It has to be handwritten. And then, you're going to go through some shock because some of the things are going to start maybe stories that you heard about Uncle Joe, going to start popping in your head. You're going to be shocked. You're going to get angry. And then you might end up crying, feeling sad, bad about some of the people that that person have hurt. It's just a
Mhm.
grieving process. You're purging, and then you take it out and you burn it. There's another way of getting rid of and just disconnecting the energy cord.
And that's the thing, right? There's a lot of stuff that can be handed down generation to generation to generation,
Mhm,
be it types of behavior, good and bad. And,
mhm,
a lot of the big healing comes from breaking negative behaviors and negative actions that keep
mhm,
being handed down. For instance, a parent that, is quick to hit and ask questions later,
mhm,
learning to communicate with child before you're just dealing out corporal punishment, you know, or not allowing two children have feelings, have opinions, just breaking those type of things. So that is no longer a trauma that you are passing down onto those who are unsuspecting, right? They're
mhm,
coming in happy little beings from the other side, and then, we're handing them burdens. Well, what can we take off that plate before they even come here so they're not immediately burdened with these type of things? Um, Generational trauma is one of the most common issues that come across from my clients. A lot of forgiveness can come when you realize that they were also hurt. Mhm.
mhm. Yep,
What is the saying? A hurt person hurts others.
yep.
So, and I think sometimes that's one thing that we find it hard to believe or are hard to accept. If we are somebody that had a troublesome childhood, neglectful parents, hateful parents, mean parents, whatever you want to say, but realizing that they were taught that
Mhm,
and they were hurt as well, and maybe in some instances they were doing the best that they knew how, even if it wasn't great for you,
mhm.
and that can be a hard one to swallow and take in and go, "Yeah, okay."
And that's what I usually find with clients who have trauma in childhood.
Mhm,
First, your first set of teachers are your parents. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, the only, and then I had to get the client to see from the parent's perspective. I go, this is not an excuse. This is not, to not hold them accountable, but this is for you to understand where they're coming from.
Mhm.
And once you understand the pattern of where they're coming from, then you can break that pattern and not continue it into the lineage, into the next generation.
And in a
So,
way, that's not only healing the client, but for the parent, maybe who has passed, who is saying, "Here's why." And maybe
hmm
they're coming to that understanding, and that's a part of their healing process on that other side, is they're having that realization and they are sharing it forward. And that
yes,
I would say there's usually an apology coming with that as well.
yes,
Um, Dixon says, absolutely. Alcoholism, sexual trauma, addiction, etc. I imagine they come out of the dark past and now we must heal them together. Thanks for having this combo. Well, thank you for joining. Another thing I find that happens often is clients' grandparents come through in spirit to shed light on how that affected their parents' abusive patterns and apology. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have had and it's not so much on when the healing. There's a few in the healing, but also in the reading that comes through
Hmm.
where I said this is not an apology, but I had someone look at someone. It was an absent father. So I had this client. I said it's not an apology, but I want you to understand where he was coming from. This was he was not taught how to be a parent because he never had the example,
Hmm.
And we start and it's I love it because when it comes to ancestral healing, I love it because you don't just help the client in the living, you help the client in spirit.
Hmm.
And it's like that is such a great feeling because when that spirit has a little bit of a release or they purge and continue on to where they need to go or the next level that they need to go.
I think we kind of skipped over this part because we got into some good questions, but the benefits of actually going through ancestral healing, more than just the, "Oh, I feel better now." Right? We are part of the broader
Mhm.
story, ancestors, hopes, and dreams. And one thing to remember, and sometimes this is a scary thought, we are going to be somebody's ancestor one day.
Mhm.
So, how do you want that to be presented? And what can you put out there? Right? So, most of us are going to become somebody's ancestor, you know?
Mhm.
What are they going to say? You know?
What were you thinking?
I was kinda thinking that, I'm like, "Do I say that out loud or do I not? I can't wait to be the unhinged aunt." Right. Yeah, yeah. Um, like, what are they gonna say about that great Aunt Maria, you know? Here's what she did, you know? And I'm sure there will be jokes, but there will also be like, "Wow, she was doing a lot of healing work. She was
Yeah.
doing," "she helped start this." Um, and then the hypothetical question, is it better to be known as the ancestor who broke the bonds and go, or to be almost quietly forgotten in a way because you broke it so well that at a certain point, the new members don't even know it happened, so they don't even have to talk about it.
I think I would like to be the quiet one, but
Mhm,
I know what I did. I know that I did to break whatever that needed to be needed not broken, but needed to be enlightened, released. So if I'm not remembered down in the next generations, I'm okay with that
hmm,
because I know what I did.
right.
Yeah.
Now, if we wanted to summon, Spirit is funny, she said, "Come with a glass of wine and some chicken shawarma." So now I'm like, how would they summon me? Probably coffee, have some typo negative playing, coffee, that'd be a good start. How would they summon you, Maria?
Chocolate.
That was quick. There was no hesitation. It was
Yeah,
coffee.
chocolate. No hesitating on that. Yeah. Chocolate.
All right, she's got me. She's like coffee, Celsius, and crochet yarn. Yeah, pretty much. Um, let's see. I hear the quote that you have 3 deaths, and your final death is when your name is spoken for the last time. I hope by the time I'm not spoken about anymore that I've done the best I could to help the upcoming generations, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I don't know how well or the likelihood of me actually being an ancestor because I have 1 kid, and he's like, "Pfft, I'm not having kids." So I may not be. I might have to come bug somebody else's family to be like, "Well, I have none of my own to bug. I'm coming over here." Um, but, you know but I'm okay with that. I don't feel the need to keep passing down or to keep having more people in the bloodline, like, I'm good. T and Tarot says, "We call an ambassador of your bloodline. We are ancestors and also future generations. We make our lineage better for ourselves if we come back." I like that. Because I think we went over a lot of the important parts. What we didn't go over yet, as I'm saying this, is like what it's not. And the big thing is, it is not to replace medical advice from your actual PhD certified medical doctor with a practice in hospital insurance. Like they take care of this while we help take care of this.
Mhm.
So that's the biggest thing that it is not, and it's not an excuse to ignore other important issues either.
And it's not to diagnose yourself. This aunt did this, so and she had this, so maybe I have that. No, none of that.
Lisa says, "Mom has been gone for a year. I don't know how I feel about calling on her."
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. But if you are curious and you want more information of certain things that happen, or if you just want to forgive her, just the letter writing. That's when it comes in. You don't have to call her. You can just do the letter writing.
Mhm. And maybe calling on her, maybe not in a way to solve issues or problems, but
Mhm.
just like if she enjoyed cooking, just while you're cooking a meal, just ask her to come chat with you while cooking a meal. That way it's not like a job, right? You want to enjoy that time, and that you can do that with any ancestor. But in this case, just purposefully doing activities maybe that she liked and asking her to join you in them.
Mhm.
And then it won't feel so heavy to work with her. So it says, I wasn't calling on my mom, but she was calling on me. There's been a cardinal outside my front door in the same spot for like 2 weeks, sings louder and louder when I come out looking right at me. My mom always loved cardinals, you know? They'll yell if you're not paying attention.
Oh yeah.
Finally, getting their way.
Mhm.
So what about super religious ancestors? Is it wrong to call them if they completely disagreed with this stuff? Like if they found it evil? You know, that can go first, two ways I can think of. Either where they are at, it is still to them so evil, so maybe not. The other thought would be because they have crossed over and learned and elevated their soul, they'll see that it's not and they would be willing to do it. And I guess the only way to find out which way that goes is to try and call on them and see what they say.
Mhm.
If they are in disagreement, they'll let you know, and then, you just don't work with them again.
Mhm. I found that out with my mother. Um, Fundamental Catholic, did not want to, and I guess because when she was little, there were some ancestors in the bloodline that were deemed crazy. There were things I was doing when I was younger, sleepwalk, talking to people that she does not see, scared the heck out of her. Did not and help kind of help demolish that. Put me in so many Sunday schools and drive me to church and all of this. And told me I can't say anything you know. So I was geared for her to please her, and I didn't do any of that. But once she crossed over, she understood. Yeah, sometimes when they do cross over, they see a bigger picture, and I also think that was her lesson. So I kind of let it go.
Now, here's a question that just came to mind. I have no ready answer for this, so I'm going to ask you and put you on the hot spot.
Oh, gee.
Haha, dun dun dun. An ancestor, so let's say a close family member passes and they've been gone for, 5, 10, 15 years. If they reincarnate, how do you work with them still?
Reincarnate as another ancestor or reincarnate as a different person totally outside of the family?
Yeah,
That
either or.
if they're reincarnate and I have and I because I when I look into a person's energy field and I notice, oh, you just came back. Okay. This gonna be fun. I like to do a hypnosis and find out more information.
Mm,
Energy work is something that I would not go to. I would love to regress them and see how much of the memory, or if you're going to bring them back to the last one. That would be interesting to find out,
mm.
especially if there were a lot of things that were happening in their life. They just don't understand why it's happening or why they're making these type of choices. That's what I would love to do is just get them to a regression.
As you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking out, and I think if they were to reincarnate close to you, be it a family line or maybe not even a bloodline, but good family friends that the families have hung out and they come through. Like there is some school of thought that the higher self of that being is obviously still on the other side that you can connect to,
Hmm.
work with. So rather than having, the spirit, behind you or talking or however you perceive that, now it might be a knowing or
Hmm.
just an understanding because maybe now that great grandma now is, this little bitty thing that just came into the world and, still wearing diapers and can't really talk about things yet. So, but they're there, but that higher self is still accessible and is still willing to work with you,
Hmm.
if that's the case. Um, right? Kind of like what Chris just said, we are multidimensional, can be in
Hmm.
multiple realities. So, connecting in. We look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday. Bye, guys.
Bye.